Hi guys, it's another Monday in Paris. That is another episode of the Eiffel Tower for you. If you're new and you got no idea what you're listening to, this is the Eiffel Tower, kind of like the Eiffel Tower, but for your ears, hence the name. If you've been here before, if you've been here since the beginning, welcome back. Thanks for hanging around. Now, before we even get into today's episode about Space Invader and what all that means, I want to share some big news, and that is that at the time of speaking, the podcast has just crossed over 20,000 downloads a month for the first time ever. And it's likely to keep growing by the looks of it. So, I don't know, that's a crazy number for me, considering, as all podcasts, we started at 0 listeners, or 1 and 2, really. James Vazina, my old sidekick, and me just listening to them back. It's just crazy to think that there's so many of you guys out there, and thanks for your support. As for me, I had a very interesting week indeed, with the highlight, I think, was I met with a future guest who I'm not going to reveal yet, and he took me down into a secret part of the Paris catacombs. So you know the big tourist attraction, the catacombs, with all the bones and the skeletons and the skulls. There were no bones down there. This was just this secret museum. It's actually a museum. It's really well maintained, and I don't think you can even find it on Google if you go looking for it. But it has like a proper entrance and everything hidden. And it's not like these cataphiles, they're called, people that sneak down storm drains and gutters to get down there. This is a proper museum. And I'm going to be talking about it in an upcoming episode, but I've been sworn to secrecy not to tell you where it is in Paris, other than that it's on the left bank. But a little bonus, if you are following on Instagram, the Eiffel Tower on Instagram, there's a bunch of stories with all little videos showing you what is there. So keep an ear out for that episode in the near future. And before we get into today's episode, one more little announcement. I've got just 10 Croque Monsieur tote bags left. So if you've always wanted a tote bag with a crocodile on it and the Eiffel Tower in the background, now is the time to get it. You'll be supporting the show. And I'm not going to reprint the crocodile ones, so you could call them collector's items. But I got 2 reviews from people who've bought them. I wanted to share them with you. Listen to this one from Sam Davies. When I'm hiking through the remotest mountains of Australia, there are only 3 types of bags that I want to carry, he says. That's a sleeping bag, a bag of trail mix, and an Eiffel Tower Croque Monsieur tote bag. In fact, 7 out of 10 wallaby, that's like a kangaroo if you got no idea. 7 out of 10 wallabies encountered on that trek preferred the warmth and practicality of the Eiffel Tower tote bag to their own mother's pouch. This guy's done his research. And the other 3 out of 10, he says, they were the only ones not yet subscribed to the podcast. Don't be a Joey, get an Eiffel Tower tote bag. That's a pretty good review. That's better than all the iTunes reviews, I think. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for sending that review in. And I got another one. I'll read that one out later. But if you want to get one before we get started, you go on theeiffeltower.com. I've redesigned the whole site. There's drop-down menus at the top. Click on Support Us, and then you'll see the tote bag link. And I'll send it out to you. It's been quite fun sending all these tote bags out across the world, seeing where you listeners are. Anyway, on to the episode today, Space Invader. If you're listening and you got no idea what we're talking about, you're in for a treat. This is a cool story. A few interviews. I've written a sort of little intro, even though I usually say scripts are banned at the door, but let me tell you what we have coming up. Sure, this is my intro. Sure, Paris is home to some of the most famed classical art in the history of the world. You've got Da Vinci masterpieces at the Louvre. You've got sculptures from Rodin at his own museum, like The Thinker. You've got Monet's game-changing forays into Impressionism all over the place. But there's one Paris art movement that's getting a lot of people very excited, and it's right beneath our noses, by our shoulders, and above our heads. Yes, I'm talking about the mosaic-tiled works of urban artist Invader, a man whose identity remains unknown, but whose work has sold for up to 200,000 euros. And he's put 1,341 pieces of these mosaic-y arts across Paris. So, personally, I've noticed the work of him over the years, but I never really thought much about it or what was behind it until someone started stealing them from around Paris. And this is something you'll hear more about in the episode, or at least trying to steal them. And I noticed this was happening at the time, and I wrote a story about it for the British newspapers. Just one of them for a British newspaper. And I was mostly not so much taken by the fact that people wanted to steal these pieces of art, but I was really interested in the fact that everyone was getting so upset about it. It seemed to me that this Invader guy behind it all was a bit of an institution. So my intrigue deepened more recently when I met this guy, Jay Swanson, a YouTuber in Paris. He vlogs every day of his life for the past 500, 600 days. And he invited me to go on one of his YouTube videos, a live walk around the Canal Saint-Martin. So when we were doing this walk, Jay saw one of these invaders. In fact, you're going to hear the story, but it was his reaction to it that really got me thinking, and that's why I invited him in here. So yeah, one more thing about this episode, Jay, who's on it, we recorded our chat live on Facebook, so you can go and watch it if you want to see what he looks like or what the studio looks like. That's there on Facebook. And after Jay, you're going to hear the voice of a British journalist, David Chazan, who shares his tale of woe about what happened after he found an Invader mosaic inside his own home in Paris. And then lastly, rather excitingly, I'm introducing a new segment today. I've got Camille, the one behind French Today. She's a French teacher, and she's coming in to teach me something French in just 1 minute that's related to today's topic of Space Invader. Are you ready? Let's go.
One man, one country, one red scooter. Here's the Earful Tower with Oliver G.
Jay Swanson.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Good. Howdy.
I feel like I have to address the elephant in the room.
Address it.
So people listening at home on your commute, listening to this podcast, this one's being recorded live on Facebook as well. You're looking at me surprised, but you know that. Jay.
No, I'm not surprised at all. It's not bothering me.
No, I know, but it's out the corner of my eye, but we're not going to be talking about that the whole time. We're going to be talking about Mr. Invader.
That's what we're going to talk about.
And the reason that I asked you in to talk about Invader is because, you and I were walking around Paris. You're a YouTuber, as I've already mentioned, and from my perspective, this is how I remember it. You saw an Invader mosaic up on the wall, and you said something along the lines of, I've not caught that one yet, or I've not got that one yet.
Yeah.
I said, what the heck? And you said, yeah, it's a whole subculture. And I said, well, we need to talk about this. And then I got you in the studio.
That is basically exactly how it happens.
That's how it happened.
Yeah.
And I purposely haven't looked up this subculture because I'm very interested and I want to hear. But I also have seen a lot of other people tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming that they're also... is it flash invading?
Yeah, that's the app. I don't know if... Well, that's the thing. I don't know that I would have called it a subculture directly. We were walking along the canal, and I think it was right when we got up to the MK2, right? The movie theater.
Yeah.
And I saw it on the wall of the building just before it, one of the canal houses.
That's right.
And I saw it because I felt like a little bit of an unobservant idiot because I'm always looking for Space Invaders.
I always feel like an unobservant idiot.
And I was like, well, how did I not see that one? And there's actually one near my apartment that I had the exact same experience like a week ago.
So this was one you'd never seen before.
I'd never seen it before, and it's in an area that I go to regularly.
I'm going to gently turn down your voice as we're talking.
I
quite a deep voice.
I have a very powerful voice.
It's a nice voice.
People.
Okay, so continue.
So, yeah, I have that experience very regularly, actually, where I'm going through the city and I'm shocked to have not. Sometimes it's because they're new.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because he just put it up, but sometimes it's just. I think it's mostly because I'm not observant.
But it's beyond that. You're some kind of a fan that wants to
absolutely
I don't know, tick them off on some kind of checklist.
Yeah. So the thing is, the app it's called Flash Invaders. People ask me about it all the time because I do highlight it in my vlog pretty regularly. If I find a new invader while I'm walking around, I will film myself getting it.
Yeah. What do you mean getting it? This is what I want to.
So it's kind of like if you've played Pokemon Go.
Nope.
It's basically he has mapped out every single. So we should probably start by explaining what Space Invader is.
I will have done a brief introduction at the start.
You will have? Okay, good.
So we know that he's a mosaic street artist that is very well respected, and we know that his work sells for a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Okay,
good. We've got the basics. So assuming the basics, what you have is you see these on the wall and you take out your phone because what he's done is he's mapped these out all around the world. So in every city around the world that he's gone to over like 60 cities now around the world. He's put these up and he's marked the coordinates. He's cataloged it. He's taken photos. And so what ends up happening is you take a photo with your cell phone. It tags the location where you are. It takes a scan of that image that you've taken and it compares that with the library that it has. So it says, okay, you're in the vicinity of one of these invaders. The photo you just uploaded matches close enough to one that's on record that's in that area. So we're going to give you points for it. And so then you collect them.
Collecting.
Yeah. So you collect them as you go. And then it keeps a gallery in your phone of all the ones you've found.
And what's your score?
We can look.
Sure, you can look. Yeah, why not?
Why not? I'll show you guys the app. So the app looks like this. Well, for those of you who are watching on Facebook, you can see the Flash Invaders app looks a lot like that. It looks like an old school Atari video game, basically. Right. And then when you open it up, I have 125 invaders that I've caught, and that's 4,710 points.
Wow, okay. So we need to backtrack a bit because people listening at home thinking, Why on earth are they talking about some kind of what is it? A Japanese game? Is that what Space Invader is?
Space Invader, yeah, is an old. Yeah, and actually, I just saw the original designs that came. They just looked like squids, space squids that he then tried to map into the small pixels. So in 8-bit old school video games, you know each pixel counted towards the end results of the art that you were creating, and so it works perfectly because Space Invader, the artist himself, loved video games, loved old school video games, that first generation of games. And so he took the name Space Invader because he considers his art an invasion of the city. Right. So he says, I invade Paris. If you ever see I and then a little invader and then the city name,
that's him.
It's not I love the city, it's I invade the city. And so each installation of art that he does is called an invasion, or he thinks of it as an invasion. But each of those tiles then, it's perfect for the way he does art. He's actually a graduate of the Fine Arts Academy.
That's what we're going to get to because he's from Paris.
He's a big deal. He's a Parisian. He's got a proper education. His family thinks he's an industrial tiler.
Look at this story. Right? It just gets more and more interesting.
They think that he even his own family doesn't know who he is. There are people that do know who he is, of course, because he's done galleries, showings, and he's been all over the place. He was just in Pompidou recently. But
Pompidou, we're talking about the museum.
The museum, the art center, not the president. No, he's not been, I hope.
No one's doing Invader art in the old deceased president.
Right, in his coffin.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
Well, who knows? I don't know. Was he cremated, though?
I don't know.
Because then you could turn him into tiles.
The show is about figuring out France. We might do an episode on past presidents.
Past presidents, yeah, exactly. And which republic were they in and how many republics are they in? And so he puts up this art. It looks like pixel art, and it's perfect because each tile represents a pixel. Mm. So the size of the tile kind of scales up the size of the image. Mm. And they get massive. There's actually one, the show House?
Yes, with the Hugh Laurie.
Yep. So there's a Hugh Laurie. There's a house, cane and everything, on the side of a building in the 13th. It's probably 10, 15 meters tall.
Really?
It's massive.
Have you got a picture? Have you caught that one?
I have caught that one.
Okay. We'll put it on the website.
Okay, put it on the website. It's pretty amazing. So
how high did you say it was?
It's at least 10 meters tall.
Wow. Okay.
Remember, I'm an American, so I could be misjudging this because we measure in feet. And yards, but I would give it a solid 30 feet. So
wow, it's not often that you see a house on another house.
Yeah, not often at all. And so it's in a corridor that has a lot of really fun street art. So Space Invader,
Butokai area.
I don't actually. It's over. It's on. If you take line 6, it's right before you cross the river.
I need to know because I want to catch it.
I'll show you. I'll show you. I'll give you all the hints.
But the thing is, they're not. We're going to talk about who he is, this mysterious guy, in a second. But this idea of catching them, it's not just that they're on street corners and they're not just all 10 meters high or whatever. They're also hidden. There's one that I know I mentioned to you when we last met. That's hidden in a storm. What do you call it? Storm drain.
Storm drain.
Storm pipe.
Yeah.
And the story goes. It's my story. I can tell it however I want. But I was driving on the street on my little red scooter, and there was a woman standing on the street, like peering into the storm drain. It was like that movie, It. And I thought, what's she doing? She's going to get hit by a scooter driver. And as I went past, I looked down what she was taking a picture of, and there was a little one of the invaders in the storm drain. So what I was wondering is, if you got this app. It doesn't tell you where they are, does it?
No, you have to find them on your own. He has mapped them out. He's got maps and books. I mean, if you go into... So there's a bookstore. I showed you a bookstore on that walk we did. There's a bookstore where he actually put one inside the bookstore, and you have to go in and find it. And it's an older one. He's been doing this since the mid to late 90s. And the story of that goes that the woman that was working in the bookstore at the time, this is the bookstore owner that told me this story, and he actually dropped Invader's name, his first name, in that story, which I'm not sure I remember now that it's been long enough, or that I should reveal. Either way.
For a bit of context, I'm just going to paint a picture. You, as a YouTuber, were taking me on a live walk along the Quai de Jamaica Canal, Saint-Martin, where there's a bookshop called Artisan or something like that.
Yeah, we can look that up as well.
Yeah, it's a little red building.
It's a really cool little bookstore, and I should know it, but call it pressure. Brain farting over here.
Yeah, sure.
But... We went in, my friend Rachel and I went in because she knows where a lot of them are. She said, oh, there's one in this bookstore. We went right before they opened. The bookstore owner was really kind. He opened the doors even before he was open, let us in, offered us coffee, and then told us the story about this Space Invader that's up in the back. And he said basically the woman that used to work there, I think there was a register back there, and she used to work at the register. Yeah. And she and Space Invader had a little bit of a fling. He had a crush on her, and I don't know if they were together for sure or not, but he went in and installed a Space Invader over that station, just kind of looking over her, watching over her while she worked. And, it was very sweet. That could be creepy, but it was very sweet the way he told it.
Creepy,
right.
Yeah.
And so we asked, so how did it turn out? And that's where he ended the story. He's like, I can't tell you where it went from there, and so.
Has he proven, Invader proven that one's a true one?
Yeah, if you, again, the thing is that's the real benefit of having the app is that if you flash it, it'll tell you if it's real or not.
Okay. And how many are there in Paris?
There are, I want to say there are 1,400 in Paris. There are 3,500 of them around the world.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So this guy's big. This is a big part of Paris. A lot of people come to Paris. They're thinking, I want to see the Mona Lisa.
Right.
They're thinking, I want to see Delacroix.
Right.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
But you should also be thinking modern art.
I was going to say there's something wrong with that. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But the nice thing about the idea, the reason I love, this might be jumping the gun into one of your other questions, but the reason I love Space Invader and I really enjoy street art is because it's bringing art back to the people. Because galleries and museums can feel very inaccessible to a lot of people. And it also removes it from daily life. And his whole, MO, similar to Banksy and so many others, is to try and draw art out of the context that's around us on a regular basis. So much of the art that he puts up has a joke that goes along with the street that it's on or the building that it's over, or he likes to kind of poke fun at the people around the art as well. So there's one.
It's hard to come up with 3,500 jokes or 35,000.
He's a really good comedian. It turns out, yeah. No, a lot of them are just very simple, right?
Very some of them. There's one
about
above Shakespeare and Company that was just like a mushroom or something.
That's the cactus. Yeah. There's the cactus. I don't know actually. Sometimes you don't know.
Tumbleweeds, the people that stay there. That's it.
See, there you go.
Sold.
There's a penguin across the street from that one too.
Oh, really?
A big penguin, yeah. And they're all over the place. There's there's a tobacco store over near Republique called The Flash, and there's a lightning bolt with an Invader above that one.
There's a Mona Lisa as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one actually.
So you don't need to go see the Mona Lisa.
See, just find that one. See, and this is more fun because then you're wandering the streets, and what it does too is it helps you to keep your eyes up. Even on my walk here, I often end up finding myself looking in areas that I know he might have put one up just to see if they're there. And it helps you to actually see the city. Where when you come to Paris, if you've never been to Paris before, but for those of us who live here, you just look down.
Not me and you, Jay.
Not us, but the average person. Yeah. Well, the reason you do is because you're trying not to step in dog poop.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the main reason.
You know what? I'm always looking up. My girlfriend is always saying she's on alert for the dog poop. She's always going, whoa, like that, because I'm lost in the clouds.
But she grabs you and
she's great, yeah,
directs you.
Yeah. She saved me.
See, I don't have a girlfriend. That's why I clean my shoes regularly.
Well,
so it works out really well. But that's, I think, for me, what I love about it, and the reason I put it in my vlog so much is not just because I really enjoy it. I love the idea of bringing art back to the public. I love the interplay. I love old school video games, the colors, everything. I think it really adds something to the ambience of Paris. But also because I think that it encourages people who come here, like who watch my vlog, let's say, to also be looking up. Yeah. And in the process of looking up, you start noticing architecture. You start noticing interesting penthouses that are like little castles built on top of a building that you walked by 20 times before without ever noticing.
Once I was walking, very recently, I was walking down the big street, I think it's Rue de Renard, the one where Pompidou is. Yeah. And when you're about halfway down it, there's like Egyptian art up like 4 or 5 stories up. Not really art, it's like the facade, the caryatides or whatever they're called. And I was just like, whoa, this is so out of place and so cool. And most people, because it's at a busy intersection, I think, would just be brooming along.
Never notice
it. Yeah. Anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit. We talked about I had 3 questions for you basically, and we sort of skipped through them all. But I wanted to talk about more about this idea of how anonymous he is.
Yeah.
Because that's something that a lot of people find really interesting, and it ties to the story at the end, which we can give a little shout out to. I've got a journalist coming in who had a tale of woe. You know the story.
I know the story.
He had
it's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking tale of woe about his own invader. But there's this whole element of sort of mystery and confusion about him still, even though he's so popular. That's leading to a lot of tales of woe, perhaps. And I wonder if you think that's part of his appeal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Daft Punk or Banksy, right?
Right.
You don't know who they are.
Another French mystery, right?
The French love being mysterious.
Why?
I think it's a cultural thing, though. The French, you have a lot of French friends on Facebook. How many of them use their real name?
I know, such a good point. Yeah. I wonder why. I've got friends. I've got friends from other countries, but they all have their usual name. French people love to change their name.
They do, but they're so much more about their privacy.
Yeah.
Like they guard their privacy in a much more conservative and active way, I think, than The rest of us do.
So interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Do you have your real name on Facebook?
Maybe my real name is Bob.
Oh,
who will know? I'm just going to vanish one day and turn into Bob, and no one will have seen that coming.
That's a really good point. That
the French, it's kind of a cultural thing, I feel like. But I think that with him, it adds so much to the allure, because what he does is, by and large, illegal. Not always. I know that he asks permission sometimes, and he works with people, but a lot of times, and especially actually now that people are stealing his work, he'll actually work with buildings to do legal stuff. It makes it really difficult for other people to get to it. So he has to actually, put up scaffolding or something. Not scaffolding, I don't think, but he gets into places that would be really, really difficult to do so without permission. But aside from that, I think that adds so much to the allure, that who is this mysterious bandit that goes around defacing public property and making me laugh, I think that really adds to it. It's very much like Banksy, like it gives it a sense of outlaw, a real sense of mystery. Although apparently Banksy's finally been outed, but...
As for Space Invader, though, let's just say he was listening, and he looks you up, Jay
Hi, Space
Swanson.
Invader.
He finds you on YouTube, likes your videos, sends you a message, wants to meet. Would you want to know who he is?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I think I was actually just thinking about this the other day, because I watched a really fun documentary he made about sending one of his pieces into space.
Right.
Which is really, and he has a YouTube channel, and only a couple videos on it. But yeah, I would love to. I don't think at this point that wouldn't ruin the mystery, because I'd rather be a part of what he's doing, and somehow encouraging that, and encouraging the art, and encouraging people to take art back, than, just maintain that mystery. I still won't know who Daft Punk is. So, I can have a couple mysteries.
One last thing that we haven't talked about is, and I think we can finish on this interesting story. Last year, people were trying to steal these invaders.
Yeah.
Chipping them off with, I don't know what they were doing, with chisels, dressing up as town hall workers. And now a few of them are defaced around town.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Sad. It's really bad. Some of my favorites got stolen. So there's, when I was doing bike tours in the city, there were a couple that I really, really liked that went missing. And then another one recently that got painted over, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, the interesting thing about it was, I think this is the great irony of that situation, was that technically, it's illegal to put them up. And then the outcry because of that theft, because the people of Paris really feel like, I think we all feel like it belongs to us, right? That's our art. And so when they started getting stolen, people were very upset.
Yeah, right.
And
people were stopping them in the street saying, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, and that was the response of the city officially said, hey, if you see this happening, let us know. We'll arrest them because it's illegal. So the great irony, this is France. This is life in France for you. It's illegal to put them up, and it's illegal to take them down.
That sounds like one of the French catch-22s.
It is. It's just don't get caught. Yeah. Just don't get caught, and it'll become art.
Well, on that note, Jay Swanson, thanks for coming in and sharing your knowledge and enthusiasm and passion for Invader.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And now it's time for a tale of woe. So it's lucky you'll be leaving the studio before we have to put.
Oh man, I don't want to hear this one again.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming into the studio, Jay. And see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're listening to the Earful Tower Podcast.
Okay, well, I'm David Chazan, and I'm going to tell you my tale of woe about how I threw away a potentially valuable piece of art.
This is great, David. I don't even need to introduce you if you're going to be talking like that. Let's go with it. Tell me your tale of woe.
Well, to me, it looked like a child's crude attempt at a mosaic, something an 8-year-old might have done. About a dozen small square tiles of different colours glued to the wall in a geometric design vaguely resembling a face with 2 square eyes.
This sounds very familiar to me. This sounds like...
Does that sound like a description of what Invader does? No, I don't want to denigrate him, because I think that it's not that his art is bad. It's quite simply that, Philistine that I am, I failed to recognize its merit. But anyway, it stood out in the otherwise empty and dingy Paris flat, which was once my home, and I was moving back in after nearly 20 years away as a journalist, travelling the world and then based in London. And my tenants, who were 3 young single guys, were showing me around before they left.
Hang on, where are we in Paris at the moment?
We are near the Pompidou Centre in the Third
Marais, okay. Yeah. Trendy area.
A very trendy area. They were 3 very trendy young guys. Yep. Good jobs, worked with big companies in La Défense.
Did they look tidy?
The flat was a wreck, but I will come to that.
Okay.
Because these guys had a kind of a double life. By day, they were serious business executives, but at the weekend, they were wild party animals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar for people like me and you, David. What do you reckon?
Well, yeah, at that age, absolutely. So anyway, I saw this cluster of tiles stuck to the wall in the back bedroom, and I said, "What's that?" And my tenant replied, "That's by Invader. He's a street artist.
Yeah.
He's like a French Banksy." Now, I quite like Banksy, but the young guy must have noticed that I didn't appear to be overly impressed by his French counterpart. So he said very earnestly to me, "You must leave this. One day it's going to be worth a lot of money," because he knew that I was going to bring in the decorators, replaster,
Clean up the mess, basically.
Clean up the mess.
But what's going through your head looking at these tiles? I mean, I assume they're super glued to the wall.
Yeah, well, I thought, well, hey, you never know. I mean, I was actually kind of wondering whether I should keep them because he was so insistent. But, and being British, I nodded politely. But inwardly, I chortled at the notion that a few tiles stuck on a bedroom wall could ever be considered a work of art. But I wanted to prove to him that I wasn't too old to get it. So I said, "You know, this reminds me of something." And after struggling for a few seconds to recall exactly what, I exclaimed triumphantly, "Tetris!" Now it was his turn to look dubious, so I said, "You know, the video game from the 80s. "Not Tetris," he said, mock patiently. "Space Invaders, the mother of modern video games." And then he said the artist came to one of our parties and ended up staying a few months, which apparently is what happens, you know.
That
if you're in
happens
that
around the
kind of
Pompidou
scene.
area of Paris, I reckon.
And this work of art left on the wall was his way of saying thank you. And now my tenant said, "We're leaving it for you." You know, over the years, my neighbours had complained with varying degrees of either envy or indignation that the three young guys had thrown raucous parties nearly every weekend, and the flat was such a wreck that my main tenant admitted that when he was working during the week, he stayed at his girlfriend's place, and now he was getting married, and I was about to transform the bachelor party pad back into a respectable bourgeois middle-aged home. So I duly promised the young men that I would look after the artwork. I thanked them for leaving it, and then the builders came to replaster and repaint the room. "I might leave that," I told them. And the painter looked at me a bit surprised. He said, "Why do you want to keep this? This'll look very strange," he said. "I can't really plaster around that very well."
So the painter obviously didn't know either.
No, well, the painter was a lovely guy called Jaber from Egypt, and we got on famously. We even went jogging together a couple of times.
As one does.
As one does. But no, he didn't get it any more than I did, you know. And at that point, I was a bit too embarrassed to start telling them that it was a work of art, because I thought that the builders would just see me as some kind of precious, yuppie, marais type.
How old were you at this point?
I was 52.
And how old are you now, if I may ask?
62.
62. Hang on, but I'm just trying to picture it, and people at home might be as well. These 12 tiles in the room. What did they show?
Well, I wish I'd taken a photo, but it was a fairly typical Invader work. It was, you know, these tiles were arranged sort of in this mosaic with sort of the shape of a face. You could make out the eyes. It was all sort of geometric, and I think they were pretty much all square tiles, very small ones.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but it had sort of two bits at the side that came out, and then it narrowed.
It could have been a
At
self-portrait.
the bottom. Hey, who knows? Who knows? It could have been anyone. So I hesitated, but only for a moment, and the wall was stripped, replastered, and painted a tasteful shade of what the French call blanc cassé, off-white, which, you know, the painter and I decided was more aesthetically pleasing than a bunch of multicolored tiles.
Sure. Off-white, which is probably the way your face went afterwards when you realised what you'd done, I'm guessing.
Well,
I'm predicting your story.
Well, as the years passed, I noticed more and more of these Space Invader mosaics around Paris on buildings, and I even saw some of them in London. Never did I feel a twinge of regret for destroying the one in my flat. Then, about 3 years ago, it began to dawn on me. I wrote a story for a British newspaper about how one of those distinctive mosaics was about to be displayed on board the International Space Station.
What?
The European Space Agency said that it would, in their words, highlight the bridges between art and space. Now, it was bigger, but otherwise fairly similar to the one I'd unceremoniously stripped out of the flat. And then, of course, I realized that Invader is a global phenomenon famous in New York, Hong Kong, London, and of course Paris. Then came the real blow. To my utter horror, I realized that one of his works had sold for more than 200,000 euros.
Oh, no. There's the off-white. I've gone off-white just thinking about it.
And, you know, these mosaics I'd once scoffed at, I learned from reading one of your stories, Oliver, are now so valuable that thieves posing as municipal workers wearing high-visibility vests went around Paris this summer carefully removing them.
Not so carefully, though, because they were ripping
really?
they were ripping some of them to shreds.
So what's the point?
What's the point?
And apparently I was wondering about that because I read in one of the French papers somewhere that you need a signed certificate from Invader to be able to resell one of these things.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I guess they're going to sell it on the black market. But they didn't.
Very strange.
You can see that there are mosaic half taken off where they got halfway through it and then given up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there are
much
a lot
like in your in your apartment.
You're right. But I think there are now a lot of Invader imitators because you can really tell. I mean, we were joking about, or I was joking, you know, about how good the work of art was. But it was done. You know, Invader is a graduate of the Paris School of Fine Arts. He's a pretty serious player in the art world. And I've seen some mosaics that appeared to me to be just imitations of what he does, and even I can tell they're not half as good.
Well, I guess the big question on everyone's lips is, how do you feel now looking at that wall? Do you still have the apartment?
Yeah. I live there to this day. And no, I don't think about it. You know, to be honest, I mean, these things come and go. It's just a bit of a joke, really. I don't think I'll ever make it as a patron of the arts. I can't really feel too much regret about it. What's the point? So I may as well just, you know, tell the story and take it with good grace.
And we take it with good grace that you retold the story on the Eiffel Tower, David. Thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to the Eiffel Tower Podcast.
Okay, so we're going to try something new now. I've got Camille here from French Today. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
How are you? You went Australian then. You promised me that within a minute you could teach me something French language based on the episode today, Space Invader and his mosaics.
And you doubt it.
Yeah?
I'm going to show you.
Okay, well, let's start the clock.
So today we are going to talk about the word mosaïque in French.
Yeah.
Okay, if you spell that word, you will notice that over the I, there are 2 dots. How do you call that in English?
I call it a snake bite because I'm Australian, but I think it's an umlaut.
Yes, I believe so. In the US, that's what we say.
Right.
And in French, it's called un tréma.
Tréma.
Yes, you've seen that little 2 dots on the word Noël.
Sure,
Okay.
yes, that's true.
So now for the minute, okay? So, une mosaïque in French has these 2 dots, and you'll notice how I separate the A and the I. That's what happens in the word mais, that means
But
yes. And do you know the word for corn?
maïs, maïs.
Yes, maïs.
Maïs.
So
yes.
the only difference in spelling is these 2 dots over the I. Mais and maïs are spelled the same way otherwise. But the 2 dots make that there is a separation between the 2 vowels.
Okay.
Therefore, Mosaic.
Mosaic. I think you did it. That's a minute. You taught me something. Okay, we'll see you back on another episode, or?
Fantastic. I'll be there.
Thanks for the lesson, Camille.
You're welcome.
Well, there you go. Another episode pretty much done and dusted. Quite interesting. I bet you'll all be looking for Invaders around as I have been for the past week or so since I started thinking about this. I even played the game, the original game. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to try not to download the app that Jay was talking about because, quite frankly, it's just another thing that I'm going to get obsessed by like the rest of Paris. I don't think I can handle it. A few things to address. The bookshop Jay mentioned, it's called Artazart. And it's at that's Artazart, and it's at 83 Quai de Valmy. And as for Jay Swanson, you can find his videos on YouTube if you just search Jay Swanson in YouTube, or I'll link to him in the show notes. Yeah, so now, as I've been doing recently, I read out a few of the reviews that have come in since the last episode. Listen to this one. I just can't get enough of this podcast. It keeps getting better and better, says Diana75010. That is the postcode for the 10th arrondissement of Paris, or just a coincidence that she chose those 5 numbers. She says, it makes my otherwise pénible RER journey to work go by in a flash. Bring on next Monday. Now, pénible, had to look that one up actually. It's a French word that means grueling, arduous, troublesome. And an RER, well, that's the commuter train in Paris. That sounds horrible. Glad to be with you, Diana. And what you said there, bring on next Monday. Yes, every episode comes out on a Monday. I'm toying with the idea of doing Monday and Thursday. So send me an email. Let me know what you think about that. And thanks there for the 5 stars, Diana75010. It's kind of like Beverly Hills 90210. Paris 75010. It doesn't really have the same ring to it. Here's another review. Thanks from a Chinese listener. This is 5 stars from Banana Cake. She says, I'm not living in Paris. I have no plans to visit, but I love this podcast. Encourage you guys to become a member. More great stuff out there. 5 stars. Yeah, well, thanks, Banana Cake. That is a good point. If you guys want to support the show and you hate tote bags, that's fair enough. Maybe you got no use for them. There's a website called Patreon, and if you go to patreon.com/The Earful Tower, I have put a load of bonus stuff if you make a pledge. It's a monthly pledge. Have a look, see if you think it's of interest to you, and sign up and join in for all the bonus stuff like live walks, guide to Paris, all that kind of stuff. But also really cool to have a listener in China. And speaking of Asia, one of the tote bags recently went to Asia, and that's thanks to the lovely Lily Heisey, the author who's been on the show in the first season. She took it traveling around all over Asia, actually. She's sent a picture of the Himalayas, tote bag in the Himalayas. That was pretty cool. Her review, having journeyed with it across Asia, the Eiffel Tower tote bag is not merely a useful travel companion, it might also trigger offbeat experiences, surprise run-ins with other crocodiles, and smiles to appear on the faces of French travelers you might encounter. I want to hear more about the other crocodiles you encountered, Lily. But that's cool. Thanks for that review. Yeah, like I said, 10 tote bags left. I'm not remaking them. Get in now while you can. And lastly, before I leave you for another week, upcoming episodes. What have we got? We got a language one with Camille from French Today. She came in. She lives in Brittany, but she was in Paris, so we recorded a bunch of these 1-minute segments. But we also did a full episode about how to improve your French. Quite interesting. You'll hear pretty quickly how bad my French is. And then there's another episode coming up about buying or renting a home in Paris with none other than Adrienne Leeds, who I think is the empress of real estate in Paris. She's the one from International House Hunters. You American listeners might recognize that name. Anyway, so you got a week to think about it. Buy a tote bag, follow on Instagram, like on Facebook, and consider leaving a review for me to read next week. And until then, merci beaucoup.